Nichelle Nichols was, without a doubt, an icon, a trailblazer, and an inspiration for so many, many people. She of course first appeared in Star Trek back in 1966, and since then has been a shining example of just what people can do when they set their mind to it. She's well known, of course, for her work with NASA, and she has inspired so many scientists to go into the field of space exploration. Really, no list will ever accurately sum up just how much she gave to this world. But of course, that doesn't mean we're not going to try. This list is going to concentrate on Nichelle Nichols' greatest moments as the character she is known so well for playing. Nyota Uhura appeared first in the original series, then of course in the animated series and the movies as well, and with each performance just gave us another iconic moment to run through. Zoe Saldana and Celia Rose Gooding have both already made impressive moments as Uhura, but for this list we are looking at Nichelle Nichols' contribution. So without further ado, I'm Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture, and here are the 10 greatest Uhura moments in Star Trek. Number 10. The moon is a window to heaven. Star Trek V: The Final Frontier has many standout scenes. Some of them are for good reasons, some of them less so. The moon is a window to heaven is absolutely a scene that stands out for all the right reasons, showcasing Nichelle Nichols' dancing and her smooth confidence in the role. In order to avoid the guard patrols around Paradise City on Nimbus 3, the Starfleet team needs to distract them. Uhura steps up to the task in glorious fashion, though to this day it remains a mystery where she got those palm fronds. While the moment is one of Uhura's best, funniest, and frankly most arousing, it is not without controversy. Nichelle Nichols originally performed the vocals for the scene as well as the movement. However, her vocals were overdubbed without her knowledge. While the film was being marketed, she enthusiastically described how she would be singing in the film, only to discover on opening night that it wasn't to be. The vocals were actually performed by the band Hiroshima. While still a wonderful vocal track, one does have to think that it would have been better to leave Nichols' vocals intact. Despite that, in a film with very mixed reviews, this scene is a highlight for almost all the right reasons. Number 9. Facing down Mirror Sulu. When Uhura, Kirk, Scott and McCoy are accidentally beamed into the Mirror Universe in Mirror Mirror, she plays a vital role in getting them all home again. This episode is frequently marked as a fan favourite, and it's really not hard to see why. Everyone has so much fun chewing the scenery where needed and getting to play outside of the norm. George Takei is the mustache-twirling villain of the piece, one whose ambitions place him directly in the way of the away team's route home. While Scott and McCoy are working on getting them back to their own universe, Sulu must be distracted. He had previously made advances toward Uhura, who soundly rebuffed him. She uses this to her advantage. Approaching him at the right time, she chides him on giving up so easily, insisting that it is a game and he must continue to chase her. The distraction works and Scott's work goes unnoticed. For good measure, she then backhands Sulu, pulls out her dagger and slowly escapes the bridge. It's a moment of pure strength and a savage victory against this detestable version of the helmsman. Number 8. Hotwiring the entire communications grid. In the second season episode, Who Mourns for Adonai, Uhura is given the example to show how skilled she actually is. While the original series could sometimes be accused of leaving her sitting on the bridge for hours on end, this gave her a chance to expand on that. The plot sees the god Adonai reveal himself to the crew of the Enterprise via a giant green-handed space in an iconic scene. He takes control of the ship, blocking communications between the ship and the landing party on his planet. With Spock in command, Uhura is tasked with reopening communications. One of the benefits of the early years of Star Trek was a reliance on physical props and solutions. Rather than begin to furiously push buttons on the console, Uhura dons an engineering jumpsuit, gets down on her hands and knees, and manually hotwires the communication systems on the ship. This goes a long way to showing off her wealth of knowledge, not simply in linguistics, but in the actual rigging of the ship. Were it not for her experience, there's a very real chance that the ship would have been cut off from its captain forever, just one of the many skills that Uhura brought to the Enterprise. Number 7. Communicating with Klingons. Now this might be a slightly controversial moment to pick, as Nichelle Nichols herself was not a massive fan of this scene. In Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, the crew of the Enterprise A must convince a Klingon border station that they are in fact a small freighter conveying supplies to Rora Penthe. As the universal translator will be detected, they need to speak actual Klingon-y. The scene in question is hilarious. Uhura, surrounded by dictionaries, attempts to stall the guards with many errors in her grammar and syntax. Nichols wasn't happy about this, as she felt that Uhura would already be accomplishing accomplished enough in linguistics to pass this test with flying colours. It's perhaps for this reason that both Zoe Saldana and Celia Rose Gooding's iterations of Uhura are fluent in spoken languages in their respective appearances. In fact, Star Trek Into Darkness seems to address this head-on, with Uhura communicating with the Klingons in their own language on the surface of Kronos. While this scene may not have been Nichols' favourite, it leaves behind a genuine slice of humour in her final film and was the catalyst for future versions of the character to fly. Number 6. Charlie's Our New Darling. Charlie X is an early episode of the original series, one that sees the superpowered Charles Evans brought aboard the Enterprise. What follows is chaos, with the young man unable to exercise restraint over the powers granted to him by the Thasians. The original script had Uhura described as a trained mimic, one who would entertain her crewmates by doing imitations of them. However, the original story idea was changed when the writers wished to include Nichols' own talents. Nichelle Nichols was a gifted singer, so they wrote this into the character of Uhura. She begins to sing a song that teases Spock, who accompanies her on the Vulcan lute. Then, once Evans enters the room, she switches to singing about Charlie being their new darling. However, her song, teasing Evans as it had teased Spock, brings out the young man's ire and he removes her voice, doing nothing as she gasps for air beside Spock. Though short, the scene manages to showcase Nichols' talented singing voice, something that would return again through the franchise's run. Number 5. The Kiss. There truly can never be a list discussing the impact and importance of Nyota Uhura without mentioning the kiss seen around the world. In the 3rd season of the original series, Plato's Stepchildren depicts the forced kiss between Uhura and Kirk. This drew ire from several broadcasters in the southern states of America due to their reluctance to show mixing between white and black people. The kiss was not the first interracial kiss on television, nor even in Star Trek. However, its importance is undeniable. There are 2 main characters, one clearly Caucasian, one clearly African American. Though coerced, the kiss is real. Both actors refused to do a successful take in which their lips didn't touch. This is a moment that stands out for the impact it had on popular culture in general. Nichelle Nichols recounted receiving a letter in her autobiography from a white southerner. The letter read, "I am totally opposed to the mixing of the races. However, anytime a red-blooded American boy like Captain Kirk gets a beautiful dame in his arms that looks like Uhura, he ain't gonna fight it." If even one person was able to see their kiss and come around, however slowly, to the inevitability of integration, then it truly was a great moment indeed. Number 4. An example of a brighter future for Abraham Lincoln. The Savage Curtain is a later episode of the original series, featuring Nichelle Nichols' final performance as Uhura on the show. The premise, though a bit silly, contains an incredibly poignant moment for history enthusiasts: the meeting between President Abraham Lincoln and Lieutenant Uhura. Created by the Excalbians, Lincoln is beamed aboard the Enterprise and treated with full presidential honours. He's given a tour of the ship, leading him to the bridge, wherein he shares his exchange with Uhura. What a charming negress. Oh, forgive me, my dear. I know that in my time some use that term as a description of property, but why should I object to that term, sir? You see, in our century, we've learned not to fear words. Lincoln famously advocated for the abolition of slavery in the United States, this campaign that saw a secession of several southern states. Though the Civil War would end and Lincoln would be re-elected president for a second term, he would not live to see the full success of his Emancipation Proclamation. In the 23rd century, Uhura is a living example of the success of the abolition of slavery and segregation and of the advancement of the human race toward peace and understanding. While this future is still a way off as of 2022, it remains an incredibly touching moment in Star Trek history. Number 3. This isn't reality, this is fantasy. Star Trek III: The Search for Spock contains an all-time great scene stealing the Enterprise. To pull this off, the crew under Admiral Kirk all have to pitch in, including Commander Uhura taking a seemingly backseat role in proceedings. Uhura's character had faded a little into the background in both the motion picture and The Wrath of Khan, and while present, there was a leaning towards some of the more mundane tasks that she'd been lumped with in the original series. However, there is a clever twist in the second sequel. On returning to Space Dock, she takes an assignment at a lonely transporter room paired with Mr. Adventure. The young officer makes the mistake of accusing her career of winding down, with nothing exciting happening. What follows is a hilarious, if short, scene in which she pulls a phaser on him, assures him that this isn't reality, it's fantasy, and that for his own good he needs to lock himself in the closet. Dr. McCoy wryly comments how glad he is that she's on their side. She wishes them Godspeed on their journey to Genesis. This small but crucial part to play was pulled off perfectly by Nichols, who was clearly having a ball when performing the scene. Number 2. Captain Uhura's legacy. Uhura rose through the ranks in Starfleet, moving from lieutenant in the original series to lieutenant commander in the motion picture, and then commander by the Wrath of Khan. While on screen, this was the highest rank she attained, her career certainly didn't end there. Star Trek Picard's original premise came from an idea for a short trek. This story would have seen an elderly Captain Uhura mentoring a young cadet Jean-Luc Picard. While the story never came to fruition, it was finally canonized in the show's second season. There is a plaque honoring the USS Leon Grants at Starfleet Academy. Captain Uhura commanded the vessel between 2301 and 2305 before the ship was reassigned as a training vessel. Its legacy was that hundreds of cadets experienced faster than light travel for the first time aboard the ship, under Uhura's watch, with Jean-Luc Picard being one of those cadets. She served until her retirement in 2333. While the passing of Nichelle Nichols means that any proposed scenes between her iteration of Uhura and Picard will now not come to pass, this poignant tribute in the show to her stands out, even if the plaque is a bit blurred in the actual episode. Number 1. Commanding the Enterprise. The Lorelei Signal is the fourth episode of the animated series. It finally depicted Uhura as taking command of the Enterprise, due to all of the men on the ship falling under the spell of the sirens they encounter. Gene Roddenberry had always wanted to show that Uhura was perfectly suited to commanding a ship, but the restrictions placed upon him in the 60s had prevented him from depicting this. Bear in mind, he had been forced to remove Majel Barrett's number 1 from the bridge before the show was even greenlit. David Gerrold, the writer of The Trouble with Tribbles, remembered that when Nichols read the script and saw that she took command, she lit up and exclaimed that she was so excited. Reviewers of the episode comment on her skill at keeping the ship running, and also her decisive stand when beaming down to the planet to rescue the crew. Though canonically she would command the Leon de Grance, and there was a quick unspoken scene of her taking command in the episode BAME, this is the best example of Uhura in the center seat in all of Nichelle Nichols' appearances in Star Trek. Animated or not, it's an important moment for the character, for the franchise, and for female characters in Star Trek altogether. That's everything for our list today. Now, if you can think of anything else that you'd like to include, let us know in those comments below. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, you can catch us over on Twitter at Trek Culture. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick and all the various socials as well. As I say, once more, to the late, great Nichelle Nichols, rest in peace. You are wonderful. Thank you for everything. To my friends, make sure you live long and prosper. And specifically to my friends in Ukraine, stay safe. We are sending you our love. Everyone, thanks so much.